everyone. Good morning. My name is Mwikali, and welcome to Pussy Power Festival 2022. And today we are going to discuss our organizing with these fantastic feminist activists. And in terms of seeing where we are, being that we have had our elections this year, we have seen the work we do around sexual reproductive health and rights in relation to gender-based violence, but also in relation to feminist economic justice. What does it mean for us? And this one is going to be an interesting panel because also we're going to use Sheng, Swahili, in terms of also ensuring that we maintain also our own language. And I'm happy to have the panel, and I would love them to introduce themselves. And the theme of this year is I deserve. So for me, I deserve to be put on makeup and look sexy. Pussy power. Yeah. So I'll start on my left end. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, morning everyone.
Organization.
I'm Jacinta Agunja. I come from Mathare, from a movement called Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defenders Kenya. In the movement I do financing, but I'm a women human rights defender. I deserve to have a lot of money and makeup and to be beautiful.
Thank you, Jacinta.
Good morning, all the audience. I'm Caroline Njoroge. Those are the official names that I was given by my mother at birth. And I'm a sex worker based in Kenya. I have a street name. My street name is Esther. I sit at the Kenya Sex Workers Alliance, where I'm a sex workers' rights activist. I deserve to be treated with dignity and respect.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Breya Johnson. Can you hear me now? Wonderful. Okay. I am from the United States, if you can't tell by the accent. And I am the Deputy Director of Organizing at Girls for Gender Equity. I'm a Black feminist, I'm an organizer, I'm a writer, I'm a cultural worker, and I run the Instagram blog Black Reading to Heal. And I was one of the leading organizers of Occupy Towson, which was a 12-hour-long sit-in in the president's office. And we had an honorable mention in Time magazine for our work.
Thank you so much, Breya. And what do you deserve, Breya?
I deserve love, orgasms, and freedom.
And as you can hear, we have audience in this podcast, and it's very important also to acknowledge that. And being your host, I just want to give a background before I jump into Jacinta to tell us the lived experience of the current reality of women in informal settlement, especially in relation to sexual reproductive health and rights. This year, we went out on the streets rejecting the reproductive health policy 2022 to 2032 that was being brought to us by the Ministry of Health without public participation. Very problematic policy that is very anti-gender, anti-women, anti-choice, and anti-access to safe abortion. Jacinta, could you please tell us what is the reality of many grassroots women and girls in accessing sexual reproductive health and rights and also access to safe abortion?
Okay, for the reality at the ground is different from what the country is giving their reports, because in the informal settlements, you cannot access sexual reproductive health services freely unless you have money. In terms of contraceptives, family planning, when you want to be given like the screening of the cervical cancer or breast cancer, it's not like conducive for us, because even of the nurses or doctors that work from the government hospitals. That's why most of the women, we don't go to the government hospitals. We prefer the private one because they treat us with dignity. Because when you go to ask, like, I need contraceptive, maybe yesterday I have unprotected sex, they'll start you asking questions. You are already stigmatized, they'll stigmatize you for the second time. So for the informal settlement women, it's not easy. And getting the correct information, we don't have a place where we can get the correct information. Unless you are someone, you can access some information on your own. But the government hospital, they are not conducive for women, young women, when they are looking for those services.
And if I may ask you, Jacinta, as a follow-up question, and I know so you're passionate in advocating for access to safe abortion for women. How is the reality in the ground or in grassroots communities? Are young women dying?
Even during COVID, we lost 6 women in Mathare informal settlement because of the unsafe abortion. Like the government don't provide safe abortion because of what Constitution says. Because in a Constitution, they tell you like it's illegal, but when you read it, it's restricted. How many women in the informal settlements know that abortion is restricted, not illegal? When you go to look for those services, the government hospital, they tell you it's illegal. They can't do it. But when you read the Constitution on your own, it says like it's restricted. And whether it's restricted or not, women are dying each and every day. That's why when we went out for the reproductive health policy, we had an issue with that. Because even if the government says like it's illegal to have abortion, women every day, girls every day, they die because of the unsafe abortion. We know the reality of where we come from in our own informal settlements. But most of us, we don't say like somebody died because of unsafe abortion. We always find a way of not demonizing the lady, but we know they die each and every day. All the settlements in Kenya, women die, but we don't speak up. But they die because of the unsafe abortion. That's why we are saying like the government should legalize the safe abortion so that to save the lives of the women and girls from the informal settlements.
Thank you, Jacinta. And this brings me back to how we need to push also health to be a public good, to be accessible to women. And it's true what Jacinta is saying, abortion is not illegal in Kenya, it's restricted. But it's only work against poor grassroots women and not women who have money who can access the health service. So, Carol, if I can come back to you. You work with KESWA, Kenya Sex Work Alliance, which is a very big movement of sex workers network. How is the reality of sex workers in Kenya when it comes to, one, accessing sexual reproductive health and rights? And now you're talking about gender-based violence. And during COVID, even us as Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defenders were able to get cases of femicide where a lot of sex workers were killed. Could you please explain to us how is the reality? And because you're talking about movement, intersectionality, way of organizing, what do we need to do as a movement to work collectively to protect each other and defend each other?
Thank you very much, Mwikali. It is very clear and evidence that the lack of information is the beginning of people perishing. The lived realities of the sex workers in Kenya is that there is no adequate information of sexual reproductive health and rights to the communities. There is need first to understand what is SRHR as we talk about it. We have a very progressive government in terms of developing policies that are to be implemented to ensure that they serve the communities and ensure that there is a way of accessing to the services. But when it comes to a criminalized population like me as a sex worker, I do not understand what is needed for me to access the services. First and foremost, when we had COVID, there were restrictions of movement, and there was no access to services to the communities, which is very hard as a criminalized person to access services in a general public health facility. We are always labeled that we are the drivers of pandemics, we are the spreaders of sexually transmitted infections, and it gives me as a sex worker the fear to walk into any facility and seek for services, because I will be called out by the health practitioner out like the person who is always having an STI and seeking services every now and then. We also face the challenge of access to commodities. The commodities that are there and given by the government for free to protect us as sex workers from getting the STIs. We have experienced the challenge of the condom shortage. We have experienced the challenge of contraception. Where are we supposed to access the contraceptive that we need? No services that has been set for the sex workers to be able to access for safe safe abortion services. So what do? We get the information from our friends, where you are given an advice of how you can conduct the abortion on your own. And we get a huge number of young sex workers losing their lives to crooked, quack abortions that nobody is speaking about it, because at the end of the day, you are a sex worker, and as the notion that and the perception that the people out here have that it is illegal in the first place, that whatever you are doing is illegal. And we all know we do not have any legislation in Kenya that says that sex work is illegal. It is the colonial laws that criminalizes sex work, and what people perceive and what people agree knowing that being a sex worker, you are doing something wrong. So you end up doing your own things. That is why there is a very high number of gender-based violence among us, the sex workers. We experienced a big number of intimate partner violence happening to sex workers. When COVID came, the sex workers were thrown out of their brothels, the social places that they were living, because there was the government containment measure to close down all the social places. The sex workers had nowhere to go, and they had to move in with their regular clients. The regular clients who were very hostile, who were beating up the sex workers. There were so many murders of the sex workers through the intimate violence, intimate partner violence, that none of the cases, after being reported, documented, were being taken to the next step. So this is where we have the gap in knowledge, first understanding what is there to protect us. Despite the profession or the career that I have chosen, the path that I feel that I am a sex worker, this is what I'm supposed to do, there must be a way that we need to protect the young girls who are engaging in sex work, whichever way they're still doing it, the sex workers who need the services as Kenyan citizens, not looking at the profession that I am doing as a sex worker.
Thank you, Carol. And before I come to you, Breya, because we want to talk about also transnational movement building around sexual reproductive health and rights. But the reason why also we are linking sexual reproductive health and rights and GBV is to see the link, because they are linking. When you're not able to access sexual reproductive health and rights, and then you're being abused or you are raped, that's a violation of women's rights and human rights. And that's why you would see why we're organizing this festival as Pussy Power, is that most of the time our vaginas are made to, they're used to like the oppressors or patriarchs or men. When they rape us, they use to take our power away. And when we say Pussy Power is reclaiming back our power and using our biology to bring back our power, and saying we're taking back our power, and to be saying I deserve my pussy to be respected, to be valued, to be dignified. And when I say no, I mean no. So Jacinta, before I come, and Carol, before I come back to Breya, how do you see, like, what does it work? Like in 1 minute, both of you, in organizing around GBV and being 16 Days of Activism and Sexual Reproductive Health and Rights, what has it worked in the movement in the past, in advancing these causes? What has worked? Like, for example, you work with Coalition for Grassroots Human Defender, where it's a privilege you have colleagues. What have you guys been doing that you have seen it has worked, pushing the cause?
Okay, for me, what I've seen that have worked is engaging the community. Because before, the community, when violated, they always look for us. But these days, they don't do that. They follow the referral pathways, and when they get stuck is when they call for help. And another thing, calling out the government hospitals like Lions, it has made a change.
It has made a change.
Yes.
Like calling out public hospitals that are very problematic and not giving these services.
Exactly.
Thank you. And what about you, Carol? What has worked in terms of the sex worker movement in ensuring that, one, there's advancement of pushing and fighting to have access to sexual reproductive health and rights, and also advocating to end gender-based violence?
So what has really worked for the sex workers is, one, the sex workers started the organizing of the movement building, ensuring that we all know within our devolved structure where the sex workers are. And from that, we looked at how we can come in and challenge the ways that we are not engaged by the Ministry of Health, so that we can be recognized by the fact that we as the sex workers, we are women and we also deserve to access to services. So the first step that we have done as the sex workers movement is to engage with the Ministry of Health, and that is from a policy level, where there was the development of the HIV roadmap and the Kenya AIDS strategic framework, where the sex workers had to come up with a clear documentation of this is the percentage of the sex workers that have been affected by lack of access to services, and we need to mention this if we need to progress as a country in terms of HIV prevalence, in terms of seeing that the SRH is being accessed, in terms of ensuring that sex workers are part and parcel of everything, is to have a policy that speaks to the sex workers. So that is one of the things that we did as the sex workers. Again, we did a lot of community policing by engaging the public health hospitals, where the sex workers volunteered to do a community cleaning in public facilities, engage the health practitioners in the clinic and telling them this is the challenges that we go through when you deny us the services. We are sex workers who serve a bigger number of clientele, and these clienteles are also people in the society. So you need to protect me as a sex worker for me to protect my clientele, because I am not a driver of the STI. If you protect me, I will protect the client, and the client will protect the wife or the spouse or the other person. You see, the sex pattern is a very wide one. It starts from the pastor, the bishop, and everybody. So once you protect me as a sex worker, this will work for us. We engage the health practitioners. We also did to incorporate the human rights best practice for it. We did a stakeholders mapping. Through the stakeholders mapping, we looked at engaging the county health management teams, because we start from the top. We also looked at engaging the police, the law enforcement. The law enforcement were coming in because when a sex worker was raped and the case is being reported, it was not a big deal to the law enforcement, because at the end of the day, if you can sell sex, why do you fear being raped? That is the perception that the law enforcement had. But we came in as the movement and started doing the sensitization to the law enforcement, starting with county commanders, the police in blue, the administrative police, the community leaders, the chief, and the judiciary. So that from the top official, when I am arrested and I go to a police station, today if I walk to the central police station, I want to report I am raped, we have somebody who understands that rape is an implication that can affect other people, not you only as a sex worker. And that is how we did to ensure that today we have a friendly environment, which is not yet what we really want, but it is better from what was before. We have a friendly environment that a sex worker can be raped and report, get services, and be assisted.
Thank you so much. And I really love the breakdown and the way we can also learn from the sex worker movement. Now they have pushed progressive and engaged different stakeholders to ensure that also the human rights-based approach is seen and valued and also implemented. But also at the same time, seeing on now, there's this myth that if you're a sex worker, you can be raped, but also acknowledging that you have pushed the government to understand that any form of violence is violence. And when you're at your workplace or like an office you need to be valued and to be respected. So Breya, I'm coming back to you.